go through the Fed now. Start.
Okay, recording in progress. Okay, there we go. Back to share. Okay, as I was saying, today is the aircraft database deep dive. And this is going to be recorded, and I'm going to post this in YouTube and on my website afterwards for those who cannot attend. Hold on one second. Let me do some administrative switching here. All right, well, that'll just have to be good enough. Okay, great. So today we're going to cover the database in detail. Talk about the basics, how to open the database, how to refresh it, how to close it back down, a little bit of detail on where the data comes from. We'll talk about the different concepts of the database, the schema, what fields are available, all that'll be pretty quick. We'll go over how to search the database and tips and tricks with regard to that. How to use partial matches and the importance of limiting returns. You always want to keep that on so you don't get a runaway search. We will talk about how to add your results into the watch list. We'll spend a fair amount of time talking about the owner-operator field and how that relates to some interesting search terms and abilities. And we'll go into that a little bit more in depth with like how to pull the thread, starting from a hex code or a tail number and going from there. And as always, encourage you guys to ask questions, pause at any time, unmute yourself, interrupt me, anything you like, that's fine. With regards to the chat, I have a very difficult time looking at the chat or tracking that. So if anybody, you're welcome to drop comments in there. Feedback would be great because it does get recorded and I do review that afterwards. But if you drop a question in there, I may not get to it. So somebody, if you see it, unmute, interrupt me, and we'll go from there. Ren's nodding his head. He's used to me not tracking the chat. All right. Okay, so let me minimize that. Okay, cool. Perfect. All right, any questions before we get started? All right. Okay, cool. So also, let's do a mouse check. Everybody see my mouse okay? Running on the screen. Any problem with that? Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to make this a little bit larger. Let me take off the watch list. Make this a little bit larger so we can see it and clean up my screen a little bit more. All right, so in the auxiliary button stack, top right-hand corner is the database icon. That's how you activate the database. So I'll go ahead and do that now. And that will open up the database. I already have my database loaded. So if you don't, you'll get a little progress bar on the bottom of the screen asking to wait a minute or so for that to open up. I wanted to show you that. Well, first, you'll notice the aircraft database in this in the top left-hand corner, there's a little four-corner arrow set. And if you click on that, it will want to move the database window around, which is useful, but you'll notice it sort of stopped off screen or it started off screen. You got to move your mouse back in. And if you happen to drop your mouse while this part of it is off screen, you can't get it back. So if that's the case, quit SkyGlass, open it back up again, and then you'll have the database window in the middle of the screen. That's a bug. It's actually fixed already. It's going to be in the next release, but you don't have access to that now. So just be aware of that. Also, with regards to the UI, let me turn off auto refresh so we're not hampered by any of that. Okay, great. You'll also notice there's a handle in the bottom right-hand corner that kind of moves and stretches that window apart. So you can use that to, expand the database, make it a little bit easier for you to see. So we'll leave it there. Okay. Oh, and one more thing. Let me minimize that a little bit and show you. When you click on the database, you get a pop-up window that has two elements in it. There are several ways to activate the database within SkyGlass. If you try and do something that requires the database to be loaded, it may load the database for you, probably give you a check beforehand saying, you sure want to do that? And then you say yes, but it may or may not open up the interface. If you're doing it from like the watch list and you click on one of those, the info panels where it wants to go and load the database and give you the database information on that aircraft, or from the HUD, there's a place there. Or if you try and go into flight history mode, that also requires the database to be activated. My point is there are ways to get the database loaded into memory without it actually giving you the interface. Okay, so there's a distinction there, and you should know the database can be loaded, but not, searchable because your window isn't open. So if you want to open up the database interface or close it, you can use this button here, which is the database icon and the little window. If you activate the database from the auxiliary button stack, it will bring this up like you see. The other button will unload the database, okay? And so you may ask, well, what's the purpose of that? So when the database is loaded into memory, you have access to a few more fields within SkyGlass, specifically from the aircraft pop-ups and panels that when you hover over the aircraft. And in order to load those up into memory, there can be a performance cost if you have the database open and it's got to go do those lookups every time a new aircraft comes on scene. If you don't necessarily need those fields to be shown, or that's not part of the interface that you want to see, then you can disable the database, and that's going to keep SkyGlass as performant as possible, be a little bit faster. If you've got a massive machine and it's quick enough, you're not going to see a performance hit. On most iPads that are within the last couple of years, you're probably not going to see a performance hit. But if you've got, if you're really looking to optimize performance with SkyGlass, you can disable the database unless you're using it. Okay. All right. And so to do that, again, you just in the auxiliary button stack pop-up for the database, there's the international no symbol on top of the database icon. Click on that, and it's now unloaded the database from memory. So I'll click on that auxiliary button stack database, and it says button, and we get a new warning here. Are you sure you want to open the database? We say okay, and now we'll see that load up. All right, so refreshing the database. Let's talk about preferences real quick. I know we're kind of circling the target here, but the database is, let me close the database window. There we go. The database is updated every day, and an updated version is put up online by the ADSB Exchange folks. They are the folks that maintain this database. This is crowdsourced. They actually have a Discord channel and a thread within that channel that's very active. People, when they find a new aircraft somewhere out in the world, or I don't know how exactly how they source the aircraft, but they post that into a Discord channel, and then that all gets moved into the database, which is refreshed and put up every day. So if you want to have SkyGlass automatically updated every time you open up SkyGlass, you can do that. That's in the preferences on the right-hand side. In the middle, you've got a few different options here. The first one is a sort of a manual, hey, I want to update it now, which will essentially go out and grab a new version or the updated version online and download it and then refresh it. You can also auto load the database at start, meaning load it into memory. And you can also turn on auto update. So every time you start SkyGlass, it's going to go out, pull that new version if it's needed, and bring that into your SkyGlass. Again, auto loading at start and auto update takes a little bit out of the performance when you get started, makes that a little bit longer, but that is an option for you to keep it up to date. If you you can also refresh the database right from the user interface. On the bottom left-hand corner, we've got a refresh database button, and then right below that, it tells you actually the date of the database, what version that you have right now. So we'll go ahead and update that right this moment. It's going to say we're going to load it again. That's all right. Give that a second. You'll notice we've got a please wait here, and we've got a behind this window, you've got another progress bar. All right, so now the database is loaded. You can see the dates updated here. Let me reposition that. All right. Okay, so I guess the only other thing I hadn't talked about is there are over 500,000 records that are in the database. Some of this came from a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request to the FAA, which revealed some of the LAD and hidden masked aircraft that were in their databases. So that's part of how this got sourced as far as, how do they identify masked aircraft. Again, most of it's crowdsourced through, lots of different folks. All right, so that covers that. Let me do a quick search here. Let's just pull up 172's. Search by type. I'm going to limit to 10 just to keep this real fast and do a quick search. Okay, so to cover the different fields that are available, they are pretty basic and standard. Of course, you've got an ICAO. That, of course, is the transponder identifier. The registration, also known as the tail number. That's the second field here. Let me bump up the size of the text. You can see in the bottom of the user interface, you've got a text up and down button that kind of does a step up and down of the sizes. So that's probably, hopefully, a little bit more readable for you. So the next field is the registration. Again, this is the tail number, often referred to and sometimes referred to as an N number. That's only really appropriate for North America. You'll see all the United States ones have an N, start with an N. Other countries have a different registration scheme. Then we've got the country code, the type code of the aircraft. That is the ICAO, the standardized short code for that. The TY, this is the another type of, oh shoot, I didn't really lock down this what this definition is. It's the short type code. I believe this is like for 172, this is land plane. I'm not as familiar with the short type code as the rest. It's not really very utilized, but it does come with a database, so I did display it. Then we've got the year of manufacture, the specific model number of that aircraft, the manufacturer, and then the last is the owner operator. Well, not almost second to last is the owner operator. And then we have a flag, meaning is it military masked? Those are the two flags. And again, with mask, you're going to have the two variations. Most of them are going to be LAD, L-A-D-D, that you'll see. The other variation is PIA, P-I-A. Those will be listed in the flag. So let me do a quick clear. I'm going to change this to C17. I'm going to turn off partial match. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second and do a search. So now you can see we've got some flags here that are listed as MIL. So that's an example of the military. Also a good example here, in most of the military aircraft, you're not going to get some of these other fields. You're probably not going to get an owner operator. That's generally an NA. You may or may not get the model. I'm not really sure why this is harder to get for some of these aircraft, but that is the case. Okay, let me pause there for questions before I move into all the specifics.
Yeah, you notice the MIL flag over there as well.
The flag. Yeah, right. So that was the purpose of this search, so we can actually see the flag fill in. Most likely, as we get through into some examples, you'll see some of the other masked flags will trip as well. If it's a normie, it's just going to have 2 dots. All right, so any other questions before we move on? Okay, great. So the user interface for the searching and the parameters, obviously here on the left, the top is the input box, and there are 4 ways currently to search on aircraft in the database, the ICAO, the hex code, registration, tail number, the type, which we've been doing here, and then the owner operator. Those are pretty self-explanatory unless you want me to go into more detail. Anyone, let me know. Yeah, get that. Ooh. I guess I can't explain that. Bummer. Okay. Hold on a second. I'm just trying to get my view here so I can see you guys. Stretched out. Oh, that's not going to work. Okay. Okay, so these next two, partial match and limit returns, really good database concepts to think about. So we can do partial matches in SkyGlass, meaning you can search on part of the field and it's going to return anything that has that kind of a match on it. So you need to think about when you're searching on specifically like the type, if I type in C17 and I do a partial match, it's also going to return all those Cessna 172s because that's, included in that list, which is, a gajillion Cessna 172s. So if you were searching on specific types and the 3-letter type, then you'll want to turn off the partial match, meaning you'll get an exact match. If you're in owner operator, let's say, then you'll probably want to turn on that partial match because that's probably going to be more helpful for you. All right. The limit returns, also very important. I believe the default is 100. So the purpose of this is because the memory management of the database return window has not been optimized yet. So it's probably more detail than you need to know, but let's say you get 1,000 returns and you see these entries. Let me get something in the, let me pull some data just so we've got something. Okay, great. So each of these lines, they take memory. And I haven't optimized it, meaning there are literally 1,000 of these, or I'm sorry, 100 of these little rows, each with their buttons and memory, all that's been taken up with just this one return. Now, with 100 of them, you're not going to see a big performance hit. You get up to over 1,000 and things are going to start to slow down. If you got 10,000 of these rows, all of them loaded in memory, even though they're off screen, it's going to get quite difficult for SkyGlass to keep up. And you can actually watch your memory if you've got a memory activity monitor on or something like that, the task manager monitor. You'll see your memory just start increasing with concordant with the number of rows that you have returned. So and that's really just a way for you to keep from a runaway return, such as like a partial match on 170 or C17, and you're going to get thousands of aircraft because of the 172s. By limiting the returns, you'll limit your exposure in that sense. So what you want to do in the case of like, well, my purpose at this point, like let's say we want to get a full list of the C17s. So start with the limit returns at something low and then just keep bumping it up. So let me go to 250, I clear, search again. I get a full 250 returns. Okay, so we hit the limit, so let's do it again. You can see I think I hit that search button twice, so now I've got a whole bunch of returns. I'll hit clear. I'll make this now 500. Search again, give it a moment. Okay, so now we've got 275 returns in the list, whereas our limit returns was outside that. So now we're confident that we've got all the C17s that are in the database. Is that all making sense? Okay. Really important concept here to keep this on and to use it, thoughtfully so that you don't get yourself into a runaway return situation. If you do get yourself in a runaway query and SkyGlass is just locked up and you can't get it back, best thing to do is just do a force quit. Just kill it. You can do that from your taskbar or from the dock in WAC, and just kill it, open it up again, start from scratch. Or you can wait. And I've waited half hour for some of these returns to go. So, I mean, it's not worth the wait. I would just, stop it and start over again. Okay. All right. So as you've been watching me go here, we've got a search button and a clear button, which basically does, essentially that. I will note though that if you let me grab like this thing. Let me clear the search. So what I did is I clicked on that field, so I put it on my clipboard. I'm going to paste it here now. Search on that registration code. All right. Okay, you'll notice if I hit search again, it's going to go out. It's not going to clear my current returns. It's going to keep adding to them. So if I click on this again, you'll see that I keep getting the same aircraft, filling into the return here. This is useful if when we get into this next section, meaning if we're going to add them all as a watch list group, you may want to do multiple searches, gang up all the returns in the list, and then add them all at once. That's one approach. But you should just know that every time you do a search, it's not going to clear them. You have to clear your return list manually. Okay. All right. Any questions? Nothing yet. Okay, cool. All right. So, well, let's get into the fun stuff then. So owner operator is probably the real interesting piece as far as, if you're trolling around for different types of aircraft in the sense of like, different missions types, things like that. The owner operator is specifically what is registered with the FAA when that aircraft is registered, and becomes a, has a tail number associated with it, etc. Some interesting search terms that I've found are things like police. You search on police, we've got a good, let me bring this down to like 250 and search. We have partial match on. Then you get a bunch of returns that might be interesting to you. I found like this is an easy way to get a complete list of all of the LEOs that are out, law enforcement aircraft that are out across the planet. And then you'll notice that there are all registered to their different domains or their jurisdictions, let's say. So one thing you can do as far as like drilling down is you'll notice that as I hover over these certain fields, they turn green. As you may remember from an intro class, anytime that something turns green while your mouse is hovering, that makes it clickable. It's going to put it on the clipboard. So you can kind of cast a wide net for an owner operator first with something like police, and then say, well, and I'm actually in the South Florida area, so this is might be interesting to me. See Miami-Dade, so that's a county here. I'm going to click on that. Now that information is on my clipboard. I can come into this input field and paste, clear my returns, search again, and now I have a list that's just limited to my Miami-Dade Police Department. Making sense? Okay, cool. So that'll segue nicely into the next section. So if I want to add all of these as a group to my watch list, if you want to add them singly, you can just click on the banners, which are on the right-hand side, or let me say I can put in Miami Leo as a group name, and then click on this button, add to watch list as new group. Click there, and you'll see there's some feedback below the search button, and above the clear button says 7 returns have been added to the watch list group Miami Leo. All right. Now, and if we clear that and search again, now you'll see all of them are added in. They'll see the banners are all green. Okay. Okay. Got to have some questions for me. Anything. We're going to go through this so fast, even if not. All right.
Case sensitivity on the search field.
Great point. Great point. Yeah, the input field is case sensitive. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to search on, to have a partial match for the case. At least I haven't figured that out. There may be a way. Most often, though, what I've noticed is newer registration entries in the FAA database, the owner operator will be in all caps. But some of the older ones, some entries are not in all caps. So if you're looking specifically for, let me think of something. Let's look at trust, clear, search, probably get a mix. No. I'm not seeing anything in lowercase. Well, but the point to Ren's question or his comment is that some of these fields are case sensitive. So if you know that you are looking for a specific aircraft, or an owner operator and it's not necessarily coming up, you may want to try it in the different cases. Just capitalize the first one, et cetera, et cetera.
What about the ICO, the hex code? Is it case sensitive or not?
That is a good question. Let's test. All right, so I think I may have trapped for that one for this one. So we know that's going to pull up. Let me change these. Yeah, I do trap for the hex code. I actually trap for it. I'm pretty sure I either case it up or case it down, and before I do the search. You'll notice in the database itself, they're all lowercase, but this has been trapped. So that's not as appropriate. It's really most appropriate in the owner operator. Let me try and test on the tail number. Yeah, I trap for that too. It's only the owner operator, which is really the one that'll bite you. Okay. All right, so you'll notice when I put in trust, there were a whole bunch of aircraft that were listed. This is one of the ways that I found people sort of either intentionally or unintentionally hide their identities. At least they'll put a trust company in front, and then the aircraft will be, may or may not be owned by the trust. But there are like this Bank of Utah. This bank actually, if you go to their website, they offer the service of, registering your aircraft under their trust in order to, hide the owner operator name. So you'll see a lot of aircraft flying with the owner operator of these different trust companies. There's a handful. Bank of Utah is one of the most common ones. I don't know if Ren, if you can think of another one offhand. But Williamton Trust is another one that's Williamton Trust Company. That's another very common one. Some of these are also, and I don't understand their full relationship to the aircraft, to some of these fleets, some of these commercial fleets, but they're also, all under this big umbrella of a trust company. So that's why you might see TVPX. I see a lot of that as well. Okay. All right, so one thing I did want to mention along the way here is, pulling the thread on stuff. If you all remember Brio 68, which was our aircraft that was over Europe doing a bunch of routes, right up against the Ukrainian border, was part of Monkey sit reps for a long time, and we were watching that aircraft. So one day, once I got the database integrated, I went and looked and said, oh, let's go look at that specific tail number, or I searched on the hex code or the tail number on that aircraft itself, and found the owner operator, and then let's see here if we have, let's work the example. Let me minimize this and pull up my watch list. And let's see here if we can find that group. This is one enhancement I'll be making to the database or to the next client is the ability to search inside the watch list. And actually, when you see on a watch list, it's in that if you see an aircraft in the field that's in a watch list, be able to see what group they're in. So that'll be a little bit more useful. But well, let me do it the other way. Let me go ahead and load all military aircraft and address my. Oh, it's Intel. That's what he is. Okay, hold on a second. You'll notice the loading of the aircraft overall from a clean state is taking a little bit more time because again, it's going up and looking up, accessing that database, which is flat file on your computer. It is loaded in memory, but that still takes a little longer than not doing it. All right, let me minimize these. And there's our Intel aircraft. Let's see who's up. Brio 68 is up. Excellent. So clicked on the little information button next to that listing. So we've got the database information here. I'm going to just grab the hex code. So this is just what I did when I was sort of trying to pull the thread on this aircraft itself. And let me turn off the watch list, bring the database back up via the button, brings up the interface. Excellent. Okay, so then I dropped in the hex code, searched, and went, oh, okay, this is interesting. This is the owner operator. Grab that from the listing here, clicked on it, dropped that in, changed this to owner operator and searched. And now we've got the whole fleet of the LSI aircraft, which again is one of these, survey type. They've got sensors on their aircraft and they go out and do these sort of, shoestring grid patterns over a bunch of different areas. And here's a good example. You can see most of them are enrolled in the limited aircraft data display or LAD system. Okay, so this is kind of how you pull the thread on a fleet to kind of dig deeper and pull all the different aircraft based on the same owner operator. All right, so the last one I wanted to show you, we showed you the police. You can also do that with sheriff and pull a bunch of Leos from that. Hope I didn't spell that right, wrong. Yeah, there we go. So, if watching law enforcement aircraft is something useful for you, you can pull all of them, across the country or across the planet this way. The other very interesting search term that I've had fun with is department. Oops, let me spell it right. There we go, department. Okay, great. We'll do a search on that. Okay, and you'll see we've got a bunch of very interesting things. We've got a little bit of crossover with like Maitland Police Department, but we've also got some very interesting ones. Department of the Interior would be one, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, again, where you can use the database to kind of find a data point and then drill down deeper. So here I'm going to click on Department of the Interior, drop that into my search input, clear the returns, search again, and now I have all of the Department of Interior aircraft listed, plus some variations. We'll notice that I've searched first on department full word, okay? Now you can do the same types of search as or you're going to get different returns because someone, when they filed it with the FAA, they might put in the full department as a department, or they could have put in the abbreviation. So this is something also to think about when you're doing these kinds of searches. And And if you're doing things like Department of Interior, you're going to want to do, look in both ways. For example, Department of State, you're going to get a bunch that have Department of State like this. Let me pop that in, clear and search. There we go. And then we'll also get, if I type this in, DEPARTMENT. So we get 20 returns in this one with it abbreviated. And now we've got 72 returns that they entered into the database with the long form of the word. All right. So again, partial match can be very useful, but think about, abbreviations and variations and search on those as well if you're trying to build up your watch list in different ways. Okay, so let me clear that. Let me get back to department and just show some other examples. I found a lot when I was doing this kind of trolling. Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture, Department of Justice. There's some very fun ones, Agriculture, Forest Service, Department of Homeland Security. That one might be an interesting one too, if you want to, build your list that way, because it'll probably be department, DEP, the long form, also the short form, and it may also be DHS. I'm sure when they're, filling out the application, there's a limit, and some of these get really long, Department of Homeland Security and Border Protection / some other department that's a shared, use or something like that. So you may, think about it if you're trying to gather a full list for these kinds of anomalies. Here again. All right. Well, I wouldn't have told you that, or I wouldn't have anticipated we would have gone through all of the database sort of nuances in 40 minutes. Any questions, any comments, anything that you want to bring to the table that you've experienced with the database? Any suggestions? Open anything. It's interesting. The Department of Interior is something that I've searched on before. So these may or may not be new aircraft. You can see most of these have already been added to my watch list. Yeah. Oh, Department of the Army. Oh, that's interesting. Some of these are quite old, though. I remember doing this search before and then doing the backtrack to see if, how far or, how active these aircraft were. Many of them are not. But still useful to have on the list. You can do some very interesting trolling to get into these different aircraft that are, Department of Public Safety is an example, Department of State. Let's do a federal. I should have limited the returns to something a little lower, but that shouldn't be too long. We'll see how it goes. Ooh, maybe that was maybe that's going to go max out all 500 returns. We'll see. Yep, it did. Oh, well, of course, Federal Express. Hadn't thought about that. Okay, yeah. Federal Aviation Administration. That's something. So if you were wanting to do something like that, then as an example, I would put this on my clipboard, clear it, paste, and then take out this that trailer, whatever. I don't understand what those specifics were. And let me make this 100. Searching again. There we go. So now we've got a nice definable FAA categorization here. Would be interesting though. I will like to check. So I'm going to clear that and just put in FAA and see what we get. Again, so Federal Aviation Administration, sometimes they're in there, the long form, and sometimes they've abbreviated it for their own purposes. Not sure what any of these ones are. And you're also going to get some anomalies in the sense that, you know, FAAR Inc. may or may not be part of the FAA. I doubt that they are. But you'll get some other returns that also get in there. There isn't a way at this point to, you know, remove them. And I've thought about that as an option. How useful do you think that would be? Let me get a little bit of feedback. Meaning, I can like scrub this one or like one by one entries from the return list in order to clean it up to get it into the watch list. Yeah, meh. Not worth the time. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. All right, great. Cool. All right. FAA registration to LLC trustee. That's interesting. I haven't really seen that before. And a Mooney, no less. All right. Okay, well, I think we're kind of coming at, you know, the end of anything that I wanted to talk about. We have talked about all the different search terms. We've talked about limit returns and partial matches. We've talked about, you know, that the return list, you can keep adding to it by searching on different things. We talked about how to refresh the database, how to manipulate the user interface, how to add to a watch list group. Any questions? Nothing? Boy, you guys are quiet today. Well, this has been a very focused, you know, narrow feature. There is a lot to the database in the sense that it has a lot of capability, but going over all of it is not that, not going to take all that long. All right. Ren, any burning questions from you? Nothing?
Not right now. I think I've decoded the short type field though, like L1P, low wing, one engine, piston, L3J, low wing.
I think the L,
jet.
I think the L stands for land versus if it's a seaplane. You think you're right though, that the one is the number of engines. Let's test that. Let me see, C17, turn off partial match, type, clear, search. Because these are going to be multiple engines, right? Yep, L4J. The J.
Jet. Jet as opposed to T. The T is turboprop.
Uh-huh. And then P would be piston, I would imagine. Let's do clear there. Yeah. Piston. Okay, yeah, you're right. So we've got land versus sea. I'm not sure if the space planes are going to be in this database or not. And then number of engines and then type of engine. Yeah, good job. Very true. Very cool. All right. Any last questions? Any last comments? Any critiques? I'll take anything. All right. Okay, well, if not, I'll go ahead and leave it there. I really appreciate everybody's attention and your interest in SkyGlass and for, you know, using the database. Yeah, I got nothing else, so I'm going to leave it there. Sound good? All right, everybody. Hope all is well. And like I said, I'm going to record this, post this recording as soon as it's done, probably this weekend. And feel free to reach out to me via the need help button or the support form if you have any suggestions or have any trouble. And let me close the database window and I'm going to unload my database and I will say goodbye. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. SkyGlass out.
You do. Thanks, Koa.
You bet.